Oh, he would be rich if T20 had existed when he played. You've heard this from your uncles, your aunties, your grandparents, just that old creepy guy who always talks to you at the local cafe, right? Any old player who used to whack it would be absolutely rich before. And we've even done a video about something like this before, about how normal players would have adapted to T20 if it had been around in their era. But what we really wanted to do was see if we could make an all-time great 11 from players who absolutely played no T20 cricket at all. And that's what we've created, the best non-T20 team in T20 cricket ever. But of course, that meant we had to take a lot of liberties with working out exactly how their stats would have projected. So this is your best 11 of old-timey T20 players.
As a cricket journalist, I would travel sometimes up to 200 days a year. I loved watching cricket games. I loved going to new countries. It was an absolute dream. But there was one thing I hated more than anything else about it, and it was this little pin. The thing that I need to change my SIM card in every new country. The absolute worst thing about this pin and SIM cards is when I was traveling to the West Indies, of having to arrive in every new island or country and having to work out if I could still find this pin and then line up and get my SIM card in every single airport. Well, now we have the answer thanks to Sally. They can make it so you never have to worry about this nonsense ever again. They use an eSIM app that once you install once, it is easy, simple, and cheap. Oh, and it works in more than 160 countries. And you can throw these pins away forever, because now you just need to download the Sally app before your trip. And if you do it with our code, Good Areas, you get an exclusive 15% discount on Sally eSIM data plans. So before your next holiday or work trip, or any time you have to travel to another country, download the Sally app and use the code Good Areas, or one word, at checkout, and you can travel like a pro with Sally.
Santosh Jayasuriya and Mark Greatbatch get the main credit for attacking at the top of ODI. But Kris Srikkanth was the first to really make it work, or at least the first to do it a lot. And it's more odd because India is a country that produces a lot of anchor batters. And Srikkanth was the exact opposite of that. He was a batter that didn't score a lot of centuries. He only had 6 of them in 217 ODIs. But just to show you how absurd this is, Ashwin had 5 in 204. And Srikkanth's average of 29 in ODIs was below par even for his era. But one thing you can't deny is his impact. He was a batter that prioritized strike rate and impact over milestones or like anything else at all, really. And we know now that a lot of Indian fans will still say that average means more than strike rate. Like, it's almost inbred into the cricket culture there. There are still people who don't believe that Sehwag was a great ODI player. Sehwag was a great ODI player. But Srikkanth was the highest run scorer in India's 1983 World Cup. And, you know, they went on to win that. He was also handy in their World Championship win, which is a tournament I don't have time to explain to you. His strike rate of 71 in ODI seems quite tame now. But opening batters during Srikkanth's era only struck at 59. So he was 20% faster than the mean and only slightly below average when it came to scoring. This would be absolutely perfect for T20 cricket. Other early players like him included Keith Stackpole, the Australian opener, and Roy Fredericks from the West Indies. But we actually saw Srikkanth do it quite a bit in ODI cricket. And considering up until recently, there weren't that many people who would talk up his case. And really, around the same era that he played in, we started to see a completely different kind of opener, the Jeff Marsh and Desmond Haynes long-form anchors, right? So between Srikkanth's career and up until the point that Santosh Jayasuriya started opening, we didn't really have anyone else like him. We believed that his projected stats for T20 cricket would be an average of 25 at a strike rate of 159. If you're looking for a modern-day example of that, how about some Finn Allen? But if we're talking about players ahead of their time, how about the OG when it comes to attacking batting? Victor Trumper. He didn't even need Ben Duckett to tell him to score quickly. We don't have his full ball-by-ball record, but we have about 1,400 balls towards the end of his career, and he was very, very fast. He made hundreds better than a runner ball regularly, and in back-to-back innings against South Africa, he made 159 from 158, and then 214 from 247. He is still 10th all-time on the strike rate of players with more than 2,000 runs in Test cricket. And chances are the Trumper was even quicker when he was younger, because most players are, and there were plenty of stories talking about that. He certainly sticks out for his era, and then the era after, and then for about 80 years. He scores faster than cricket for 80 years. It's also worth mentioning that he scored 100 in a session 3 times. So even without his full record, we're pretty sure that Trumper was 40% quicker than other openers. Absolutely insane. His projected stats are an average of 29.79 with a strike rate of 183. We obviously weren't going to make this list without Viv Richards. He's so far ahead of everyone else in terms of both average and strike rate that it's crazy, especially from his era. And this was after his first 4 years weren't actually all that good. His record of 48 of 90 was pretty much exactly what Rohit Sharma was going at almost the majority of his career until high intent Rohit. But Viv was the first person to combine average and strike rate. In fact, for a long time. His average was 54% better than the other numbers 3 through to 5s during his era, and his strike rate was 32% better. And there is no way to include his swagger or power into this, but he really upset bowling attacks. Even a normal innings from him had such impact because at any stage it looked like he was just going to completely take over. And we always talk about Viv's power, but one thing that we don't really talk about or don't credit him enough with is that he was an incredibly professional athlete when this sport was still amateur. This level of professionalism combined with him being an elite strike rotator. So it wasn't like he was just sitting there hitting 4s and 6s. And obviously, this is a pretty important thing in T20 cricket. Enough about his ODI career. Let's see what he could do in T20s. We project that he will have an average of 40 and a strike rate of 169. A very good modern day example would be Sky. And before you pull out the pitchfork, we're not saying that Sky is as good as Viv. We're saying that Viv would have found a way to have a great average and combine it with a great strike rate in the way that Sky has in T20 internationals. But we're saying that Viv would have done this over his entire career, probably when he was young and also when he was past it. And there's plenty to say that Viv would have been a better player because he was also very good at handling tricky wickets as well, in a way that Sky would never be able to. I mean, Viv was just a force that still resonates today. Honestly, ask your auntie or grandpa about him, they'll melt. Aravinda de Silva was just one of those batters that you had to watch. No amount of numbers or data could ever explain how talented and skillful he was. If you ask any batter from his era, or even the batters that came after him, like Sangha and Mahela, they all say that Aravinda was the best without a moment's hesitation. But those same cricketers and many others will also say he probably didn't get the most out of himself. And his numbers actually show that as well. His mindset probably hurt him more than anything else. He really needed to be inspired and motivated to perform at his best. And a lot of the time, he wasn't really focused and he would just get out to poor bowlers. He needed a challenge. Having said that, he still averaged 35 at a strike rate of 81 in ODIs. And it's not the strike rate that was an issue. He was 15% faster than the other number 3 through to number 5 of his era. And remember, he played a lot in the middle overs. And if you thought they were boring now, my God, you should have seen them in the 90s. So I think if we had a ball-by-ball data for his entire career, you could do a true strike rate calculation, and I think his numbers would be a lot more impressive. But from the limited data we have from 99 through to 2003, he had a true strike rate of plus 7.85. And remember, he was well and truly past his peak by that stage. So at his best, I'm assuming his true strike rate would probably be closer to plus 15 or 20. But his average could have been better. He was only 7% better than everyone else. For players of his class, that's not that good. But he was a player who was certainly motivated by money. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that if you paid him, he would really turn up. We saw that when he played in county cricket. An IPL contract is a lot bigger than anything Kent can pay you. So we think his projected numbers basically come out to averaging around 28 with a strike rate of 148. I think a modern day example would be someone like Suresh Raina. I think we know the kind of player that Aravinda would have been. He would have come in the 8th over and just gone absolutely ballistic against some poor spinner. In the words of MSK Prasad, Garfield Sobers was a 3D player. Others called him the first 360 player, not for his scoring shots, but just for his backlift. He could bat, he could bowl, and he could field. He's arguably a top 10 test batter of all time and maybe the greatest fielder of his era. And he was a brilliant fielder anywhere, as a catcher or in the ring. And on top of this, he was someone who could bowl left arm seam, left arm orthodox, and left arm wrist spin. At a certain point, I don't know how you fit all those different bowling types into only 4 overs. But the flexibility that he gives you, and also he was willing at times to change what he was bowling in the middle of an over. It's just incredible. I think in any situation, if you thought the ball was going to swing, you would definitely use him early on for 1 or 2 overs. So maybe the first over and then the 3rd over, where he was brilliant when the ball was swinging. And then you bring him back on later on to either bowl defensively with his left arm finger spin or try and take a wicket with his left arm wrist spin. And then if you didn't, you could still use him at the death where he was pretty accurate and he had a decent Yorker. Not to mention that if he was bowling spin, he could actually just spin the ball away from any batter in the world because he could spin the ball in both directions as well. He's pretty handy. And when he was attacking, it really went absolutely nuts. Malcolm Nash became a name in cricket folklore because of one over where there were 6 sixes. Also, Sobers was so flexible as a test batter that he could bat anywhere from 3 to 7. And because we don't have a lot of left-handers, we can actually just promote him up the order here. He could have opened in T20 cricket. I'm pretty sure of that. And when it comes to the financial side of T20 cricket, Sobers once tried to play a league game in England over playing a test for the West Indies, which is exactly what we're looking for if we're going to sign a player for a 12-month T20 contract. We expect that he would be averaging around 40 with the bat and striking at 107. Those numbers on their own are pretty good. With the ball, averaging 26, an economy rate of like 7.4-ish, and a strike rate of 21. I mean, those are absolutely ridiculous. The modern day equivalent would be Sky with some level of Akshar Patel or David Willings bowling, and maybe a combination of both. But we probably wouldn't even need him to bowl his quota in here. And it doesn't matter, because he's good enough with the bat to still make our side. We've got another famed all-rounder here, Keith Miller. And he is one of the most all-rounders of all time. On top of being a cricketer, he was also a fighter pilot. He was a professional footballer at one stage. And well, let's just say that he was close to certain royals. In terms of just cricket, Miller mainly opened the bowling. He was fast and good with an average of 22.97 in Test cricket. Miller's batting wasn't always needed as much in what was a very strong Australian lineup, but they batted him at 4 and 5. He wasn't one of those all-rounders who came in at number 8, was he? He was literally in the coal mine with the bat. But he was the sort of guy that would take the new ball and then also be in before lunch on a bad day. However, he was very similar to Aravinda de Silva as someone who needed to be motivated. So his numbers don't quite look as good as they should. There was one game against where Australia were trying to score 721 in a day, and he just kind of gave up. He needed there to be something on the line. But when he was needed, he would just attack. He just didn't seem to care all that much what would happen to him. And that's exactly the kind of cricketer we want at number 6 in this side. Also, I think he was a fast enough bowler that he doesn't need the new ball on our side, because we have a couple of other options as well. He could certainly have bowled bouncers in the middle and Yorkers at the end. With the bat, we think he'd average about 25 with a strike rate of 158. A bowling average of 21, economy of 8.21, a wicket every 15 balls is what we've got him down for. He was an attacking batter and a strike bowler up front. A fantastic combination to have. I don't think we've really ever had a player like Keith Miller play in T20 cricket. Plus, his hair would have got him a multi-million-dollar shampoo ad. And isn't that what it's really about? And we finally need a wicketkeeper to finish off our top 7. And we're going to go with Farokh Engineer. He actually opened the batting quite a bit, but he batted everywhere from number 1 to 10. So I don't think he's going to mind coming in at 7. And unlike a lot of modern keepers, he was actually in the side because he was brilliant with the gloves. Even though he was solidly built, he had incredibly sharp reflexes and was very agile, especially moving sideways. But he could still swing that stick. And he was a pretty fast scorer for his era, and even his average is really relatively close to par. But for us, it's really the wicket keeping does make a big difference here, because he was a specialist keeper. He's not going to drop easy catches or fumble throws coming in or cost extras or anything like that. And with the bat, he's more than capable of giving us the odd 20 off 10. We believe that his projected stats would give him an average of 23 and a strike rate of like 180. But there is no way for us to project his wicket-keeping stats. He would just be a better wicket-keeper than most modern keepers because they're not specialists. There's actually a couple of other guys here who were very unlucky to miss out on this. Australia's Rod Marsh, who did play a lot of one-day cricket and was really good at it. Dennis Lindsay in South Africa had a couple of incredible series before apartheid ended his career. And of course, Ramesh Kaluwitharana, who would be great to speculate on. I'd like to think that he would have an average of 17 and a strike rate of 201. But that's just because of how much I loved him. In this lineup, let's be honest, Kapil Dev could bat higher than 8, and he would probably float around this order. He's the one batter who had a better strike rate than Viv Richards during his career. Although, obviously, Kapil did it at a slightly lower average. But he also could take the new ball and swing it around corners. A lot of his contemporaries will say that he never quite lived up to his potential as a batter. And part of that is probably because he was striking so quickly. So I think we would rate him higher than perhaps he was rated at the time. Because I think if you look at his batting record with modern eyes, he's fantastic. He was a bit different with the ball though, because while he might have been a swashbuckling, moustache-twirling batter, he was a bit calmer with the ball. Defensive, maybe is the word. Actually, maybe that's going too far. He wasn't quite a defensive seamer, but he also wasn't a strike bowler. He was kind of somewhere in between, which isn't a bad thing in this lineup. What we do know is he could swing the ball away from right-handers, which would make him a great power play bowler from time to time. Although you imagine if he was bowling now, he'd probably be using the wobble ball as well. And I think certainly if he played any later, he would have mastered the slower ball too. If you didn't want to use him with the new ball, I think he'd be a very good bowler and tough to get away in the middle overs. And then we've also got to mention his fielding. He was a very quick fielder for his era. Although his catch of Viv looks slow compared to modern standards, those sorts of takes were not as common in 1983. There's plenty of other great stories about his fielding. We haven't even mentioned the innings against Zimbabwe. He certainly could take down junk bowling. So his projected numbers would be an average of 20 with the bat and a strike rate of 167. With the ball, he'd be going at about 23 and an economy of 7.53 and a strike rate of 18. He's someone that you can definitely rely on for bowling for 4 overs on virtually most days and can come in and whack it at any time you want as well. And you're not losing anything in the field. Richie Benaud played 63 tests and had a batting average of 24 and a bowling average of 27. On top of that, he was a very successful Australian captain. He was someone that was a really good batter to have at number 8, but probably lacked the ability to bat consistently up the order. 2 of his 3 centuries came in one series against South Africa, but his batting is not the reason we're interested in him. He was a very crafty leg spinner, and he used to set up traps, and he had patience, and he baited batters into things. All skills that would be perfect for a leg spinner in T20 cricket. He also has a great record in India because he was a fairly fast leggy for his era, which again would be great for the IPL, but also most leg spinners now in T20 cricket bowl a little bit quicker. We've got his projected batting stats of averaging just under 20 at a strike rate of 136. His bowling average, though, we have at 21, an economy of 7.15, taking a wicket every 17 balls. A modern example we would have is a much better version of Adil Rashid, but maybe bowling a lot quicker like Rashid Khan. But the most important thing with Richie Benaud is that he would have his own podcast and YouTube channel with 5.4 million subscribers. We're pretty sure those numbers are correct. Having a decent frontline left arm seam is obviously a very important thing. And Alan Davidson wasn't just decent, he was elite. He was the greatest left-arm bowler until Wasim Akram picked up a ball. He was very strong in his body, but also very skillful with what he did, and he would swing the ball just massively. When he batted, he could slog him a bit too. In December 1960, he scored 100 runs across both innings and took a 10-for, and he became the first player ever to do both of those. He was mainly a new ball bowler, and he was very, very good at it. He averaged 20.5 in Test cricket with a strike rate of 62, an economy of 1.97. So we see him as a slightly better version of Trent Boult, who can also whack 4s and 6s. Probably 3 overs up top and 1 in the death. We believe that his projected stats would be batting average of 17.5 and a strike rate of 130. But his bowling would be 19.45 with an economy of 7.1, taking a wicket every 16 balls. If you want to think about another player that he's similar to, it's Chaminda Vaas, right? But he's like the S-tier level of Chaminda Vaas. He can bat and bowl better. And to finish off this side, you knew who was going to come here. Anyone who's followed this channel knows I was always going to go with Big Bird, Joel Garner, the greatest ODI bowler ever. Also, he might be the most underrated test bowler ever, but that's a topic for a different video. He was tall, he was fast, he was accurate, and he was very skillful as well. He had this machine-like ability to deliver Yorkers at will. We believe that if he was bowling now, his Yorker success would be close to around 50%. And the reason that we come up with that number is because that's what we got from one season of Glenn McGrath playing in the IPL. Most bowlers are lucky if they actually deliver a Yorker 33% of the time when they're trying. So we believe that his projected stats would be an average of 15.6 and an economy of 6.1, taking a wicket every 15 overs. He'd basically be, just bit Bumrah type stuff. And thanks to Keith Miller, Kapil Dev, Davidson, and Sobers, you don't actually need him to bowl with a new ball that much. You could bowl 1 in the power play, 1 in the middle, and then come on at the death and close the game out. So that's our 11, but we needed a 12. And so we've gone with Don Bradman, the greatest batter who ever lived and the greatest cricketer of the 20th century. No athlete has ever really dominated a sport the way that Don Bradman had. 40% better than the next greatest batter and nearly 3 times as good as the average player in his era. We had to find him a role in this side. And it is really fascinating to think of what kind of a T20 batter that Don would have been, because he's synonymous with batting number 3 in the format. But if he's playing T20 cricket now, I think he'd be an opener, right? Or he was so good against spin, you might even bat him at number 4, but I don't think he's a number 3 now. I think CricViz once told us that he had an average of 123 versus spin in tests. So if you're a spinner, you're just not getting him out. And he was also an elite striker for his. From the data we had, he had a strike rate of 58.6, which was 36 better than the other numbers 3 to 7 in his era. So he's not known as a fast scorer, but he actually was for that time. So if we just take his test numbers and we try and project them in T20 cricket, we've ended up with something that looks ridiculous. An average of 66.6 and a strike rate of 174.6. Yeah, we think that's good enough for 12th man in this side. Although if I'm Kris Srikkanth and Aravinda de Silva, I'm thinking to myself, I might need some runs pretty much in every game to keep him out. South Africa did not choke. In 1906, South Africa needed 284 to win. They'd only passed 100 in half their test innings at that point. At 105 for 6, it seemed impossible. They fought back but lost another flurry, leaving 45 to win with 1 wicket in hand. At the crease was Dave Norse, who was a capable batter, and he was joined by Percy Sherwell, the only debutant captain keeper and number 11 in Test cricket history. And these two were doing it. A huge crowd in South Africa cheered on every single run. With 8 left, Sherwell edged between slips for 4. Straight after, Norse ran a 3. England bowled 3 dots. All they needed was 1 wicket to tie. Instead, a leg side full toss, boundary, game over. This was Test cricket's first 1-wicket win, and the last partnership was a record for almost 100 years. But it was also something else. This was the first Test match that South Africa had ever won. Buy my book on Amazon, Overthrowing Cricket's Empire.